Meet your new go-to for a fresh and inclusive approach to health.
Wellness Rebranded is the pod where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist combine perspectives to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and your feelings.
Whether we're serving up juicy stories, breaking down the latest research, or dropping practical tips, we'll leave you informed, inspired, and ready to take health promoting action.
We get you because we are you.
We've joined forces because we know that health isn't one-dimensional, and neither are you.
Tune in for real talk that cuts through the wellness and diet culture hype. Stay for the laughs, the insights, and the feel-good vibes. Okay, you guys, so there's a question that I actually get a lot, and I thought it would be an interesting one to unpack on the pod. So, obviously, intuitive eating is about tapping into your intuition, your instincts, your emotions, your thoughts around food, and learning to tune out the external noise, the so-called food rules, the calorie counts, the macro points, the, good and bad food ideas, and really instead tapping into your body and how it feels. And I always like to tell kind of what I often will say to people is, those rules or those meal plans or that diet or that calorie number, that's temporary, right? You can do that for a time, but your body and its cues are forever. And so often people will say to me, okay, like I get it. That sounds great, but I actually have no idea. Like, how do I know how food makes me feel or what makes me feel good or what makes me feel bad or literally what am I looking for? And I've gotten the question enough times now that I actually thought it'd be something really interesting to chat about here on the pod.
I love that. I obviously don't get this question very often, but I've thought about it myself, right? When I first started learning about intuitive eating, like listen to your body sounds crazy. Like it's hard because I think life is very distracting, so we tune out of our body all the time. And of course, we've done episodes on this before, but like, how do we know what makes our body feel good or not good? Like, I think it's worth talking about for sure.
Yeah, or like, what are you, okay, listening to your body sounds great, but what am I actually listening for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one of my favorite things that I get from people is I actually have it on video. A client sent me a video thing for some reason, and she literally said, when I used to hear you talk about listening to your body and how food makes you feel, I actually had no idea what you were talking about or how I was ever going to do that. And now I get it. And now that I get it, it's so much easier to choose things that feel good. So I just love that. I always think of her whenever I think of this topic. But before we do that, it might be helpful to just think about so intuitive eating. I always think of it in my mind as there's two pathways, right? There's the pathway of understanding what supports you to listen to your body, and then there's the pathway of understanding what blocks you from listening to your body. So maybe it would be helpful to kind of kick off the conversation of just what are some things that you guys think block you, some barriers from listening to your body before we actually talk about what you're listening for. Let's talk about some things that may block you from doing it.
Oh, I can think of busyness, like thinking of the next thing to do. Those days that I overwhelmed with, my to-do list or all the things that I need to do that I'm on to the next thing and the next thing that I don't give myself the chance to pause at any point or in any way. My body could be yelling a lot of stuff and I am not listening because I'm focused on something very specific, on my anxiety, I guess. And nothing much is happening right then and there.
Yeah, 100%. Very common. What are some other?
Completely agree. Life is distracting, right? Like, even if you're not busy like that, which, like, be honest, who's not busy like that? But even if you're not busy like that, like, we're so tuned out, right? We're on our phones, we're interacting with other people, maybe, we're trying to tune out of life, right? We're reading a book, we're watching TV, we're doing stuff like that. So we're not really paying attention to, like, how our body feels.
Yeah, so busyness, distractions. What else? What else might block people from listening to their bodies?
I mean, as a therapist, something that comes to mind is even the thought that you don't deserve or are not worth of the fact of listening to your body. Sometimes we're so used to giving and giving to other people and paying attention to what other people need
Mhm.
and what their bodies are saying, and we put ourselves last, that I don't know, maybe that's something that came to mind. It's like, I don't need to listen to my body because I don't deserve that, early spot on the line of listening. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I
I
agree.
hate that.
I know, yeah, same.
Of course, we all deserve to listen to our bodies. Like, we're all worthy of self-care, of eating, of resting. Like, that's not like a moral issue.
No, but not for
Something else that
everyone. I mean, some people might think, it depends on their self-esteem or what they've gone through, that everybody else comes first. And then sometimes we don't know that that's part of taking care of ourselves. And it's part of the love that we give ourselves, is to tune in with our own needs, whether they're physical, emotional, mental, whatever that is.
I don't want to waylay this conversation because I know we're talking about, tuning in, but I see this in fitness all the time, right? Like people think they don't deserve to rest or they don't deserve to eat something, whatever, unless they've exercised that day. So I understand that concept. I just hate it.
hmm yeah, totally. I'm actually I have someone very close to me in my life who kind of for a long time lived by the mantra of, well, it doesn't really matter what's happening with me. It doesn't matter if I'm sick. It doesn't matter if I'm tired. It doesn't matter if I don't feel good. It doesn't matter if whatever, because everyone else, what they need is so much more important. And so,
Uh-huh.
I mean, it is very common what you're saying, Maria. And another one that comes up to me or for me is emotions, right? So just kind of that maybe big emotions might make it harder to tune in and listen to your body. And same with dieting rules. So, of course, if you are counting calories or macros or points or trying to follow a rigid meal plan, that has nothing to do with what's happening inside your body, right?
Yeah.
That's like an external thing that, actually actively disconnects you from your
Hmm.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stress is another big one, I think.
I kind of can't believe we didn't come up with diet culture first. That's like
I
our whole thing.
Perhaps you guys thought it was so obvious that nobody mentioned it. And then of course just like literally not knowing what to listen for, I
Mhm.
think, right, is a common one. So, when you I know how I normally teach people to start to go about this. And actually maybe I'll share one basic tip that this is usually the first thing that I say to people if they say to me, Elizabeth, that sounds great, but I actually have no idea how to do that. What am I listening for? I'll say, well, here's a really simple way that you can start to key into it is at meal times, either before or especially after your meal, ask yourself this simple question. Do I feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral right now? And just literally think about the meal you just ate and ask yourself that question. Do I feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral?
In terms of like your fullness, or or emotionally, or all of it.
So I would say all of it because as we get into the conversation, for me, how you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally is all part of how food makes you feel.
Hmm.
So I would say all of the things, but if it's easier to start, maybe just start thinking about it physically.
I feel
Okay.
like I kind of do a version of this with fitness too, although it makes more sense with fitness for like the beginner, right? Because we want to know like how your body feels during exercise. We shouldn't feel
Mhm.
like stabbing acute onset pain, you know,
Mhm.
but a slow burn or like a slow onset discomfort is acceptable. We also talk a lot about like how do we feel the next day because that's when it really matters, right? Are you so sore you can't even sit down? Are you so sore that you can't perform life the way you want to? Or did you feel okay but a little bit uncomfortable?
Mhm.
So a little easier to see with fitness because it's usually a bit more obvious, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm thinking of relationships in my mind. It's like, how is this relation, this interaction with this other human being? Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And that's a wake-up call there of what relationships you want to nurture and which ones you don't. With
Yeah.
Don't
those,
ask questions you don't want the answers to, Maria.
Certainly a lot of applications of that question, I would say.
I'm thinking like today, I was away all day and I came home around 3:30 p.m. and I haven't had lunch. I had breakfast, late breakfast. So if I would have asked my question, do I feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? I mean, it wasn't pleasant in the sense that I was hungry, but as soon as I put that plate of food in front of me, it was so pleasant because I was driving home and knowing what I had in my refrigerator. I'm like, I'm going to make myself that plate with that food. So guide me a little bit better here. So in that example, yeah, unpleasant in my body because my body was not fueled, like my body was unbalanced in any way or in need of
Yeah, you were
that
overly
fuel.
hungry.
Right. And it wasn't overly hungry. Like I wasn't like a one or two in the fullness queue, but it was like, yeah, my body needs that care, that hug, that, meal hug. So yeah, how in that example, how does it apply?
Does that like
So
warm
I
your heart
love,
that
first
Maria's
of all,
using the fullness cues?
I was gonna say, I love that you're referencing the fullness scale. That's actually one or two on the hunger scale. But love, love, love that you know that and are using it. That like literally makes me smile. Yeah, Tara's clapping. So, well, like here's another way to access this, and this is actually a conversation I was having with a client yesterday, is we probably know in the extremes, right? When a food makes us feel really, really good, or when a meal made us feel really, really bad, right? We can probably all think of a time when we landed in one of those scenarios. And so the work and the practice is learning how to fine tune it so that you can recognize it on a smaller, like not in the extremes, but in the everyday. And so some other ways, like thinking about that meal that you ate, Maria, and we don't know what was in it. And frankly, we don't need to know what was in it. It's actually in a way more helpful to have the conversation without knowing, because sometimes our mental thoughts about the food influence how we think it feels like, especially if you're stuck in that good versus bad kind of black or white thinking around food. So actually, without telling us what the food was, like if you were to think about how that meal made you feel afterwards, did you feel sluggish? Did you feel energized? Did you feel, oh my gosh, now I feel really strong mental focus and I'm ready to kind of take on the demands of the day? Did you feel like how, if you were to put sort of adjectives, are those adjectives? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Verbs, I don't know. If you were to start to put language to how you felt after you ate that meal, what words start coming up for you?
That's a great question because I felt all of the above that you mentioned. So I hope my answer doesn't make people think that it's like that all the time because it's not. But actually, today I felt that after that meal, I was back to baseline. Like I was back to my, to where I should be. Because I didn't eat more than I needed. I don't think I ate, something that I like. I ate. So for me, it felt that I was like, oh, I'm back to being myself and keep going with the rest of the day. But it's not usually like that. I've had those times that I eat and I'm like, I need to lay down in my couch for half an hour. Or I feel super bloated. I'm like, oh, that didn't sit well with me. That was not a good,
So
not
I
a
think
good
starting to
match.
look for physical symptoms is another thing. Like, you talked about it, bloating or like super gassy or, I don't know, something gave you diarrhea or like something obvious like that. But also, like I know for me, if I were to eat the type or when I eat the type of candy that's like pure sugar candy, so like, I don't know, jelly beans or Skittles or something like that, I like those things. They're yummy, but I don't eat them very often because if I do eat them, particularly only those, so like not those combined with another food, I almost always get a dull headache right in the middle of my forehead. And I don't
Mm.
like that feeling. So I know that when I eat that particular type of candy
Hmm.
on I don't know if an empty stomach is the right word, but sort of by itself, it's always going to give me that dull headache. So you can start to look for symptoms
Hmm.
or things like that in your body that either do or don't feel good. Do you guys, either of you have a food like that that either has a very positive or very negative reaction when you eat it that you are aware of?
So that's a good question because I mean, not to put my husband's issues out there, but hey, his wife has a podcast, so here we go. Um,
We love you, Greg.
I'm on the edge of my seat now. No.
so when we met, I don't know, 20 years ago, he spent a lot of time in the bathroom, right?
Uh-huh.
And years later, I'm like, I'm done with it. I'm gonna start a diary for you, and I'm gonna
Aw,
write
that's love,
down
Maria.
every time you eat something, how that happens. And because of that, we found out that popcorn is a big no no. Like, no, no. Like,
That's a tragedy.
yeah, if I'm ever mad at him, all I need to do is like,
Make popcorn in his food.
yeah, it's like put popcorn in his food.
Hey, babe, let's do a movie night. I'm not at
Yeah.
all angry.
Dang, I wish my husband had something like that where I could secretly
Hey,
secretly make him.
do the diary. You might find something. Just start writing down what he eats. Anyway, to answer that question for my husband is popcorn.
Yeah, and I mean it sounds a little bit silly when we're joking about it, but how many either like if you're out there listening or us here in the room, how many times have you heard someone say something like, "Well, I know if I eat such and such it messes me up, but like I just eat it all the time anyway." And my
Yeah.
response to that is like we all have body autonomy and it's certainly you can choose like, if you know eating ice cream is, and you're lactose intolerant, but every now and then you just want to do it anyway, like go for it. Who am I to tell you? Like as long as you're making a intentional choice. But I all the time come across people who are like sort of not in tune with it or just like do it anyway without it being an intentional choice or
Mhm.
really like understanding or making the connection of what is
Mhm.
happening in their body. So I think sometimes it's right after a meal, sometimes it's not right after a meal, right? So like it's things like your energy levels, your mental focus, I would say those are probably you're going to notice fairly quickly after a meal. Did it energize you or did it not? Like do you feel really sharp and focused now or not so much? But also your bathroom habits, right? So, like our bowel movements tell us a lot about our health and our diet overall. If you're like, always constipated or always have diarrhea or always straining, then there may be a connection with food. You may notice when you start adding more fiber, you go to the bathroom more regularly, and that feels good or not, right? It's going to depend individually. I think also like a big question, I probably should have led with this one, but like, was that meal satisfying? Did you enjoy it? Right? You can eat a salad because you're following the rules of some diet and it's not in any way what you wanted, and you leave that meal totally unsatisfied. Or you can eat the same salad because it's hot out and you're craving something light and crispy and you want some veggies and it feels really good. So, was that meal satisfying to you? I think is another way to start to tune in to how food makes you feel. Anything else coming up for you guys?
Dude, I have two really kind of weird ones that I think. So, I have this recipe for whipped cream frosting that is so delicious. Ironically, it has no cream at all in it. It's just,
Oh,
it's
what is it?
like butter and shortening and sugar, essentially. That's all just like whipped
Hmm.
together. And it's
Okay.
been my family's go-to frosting for like decades. And about 10 years ago, I was making it and I would like lick the spatula at the end because duh. And it was so delicious and immediately gave me like anxiety and like pressure almost in my chest. Like, I think it was a mental,
Heartburn kind of thing?
not like heartburn, but I think it was like a mental reaction to it where it just like gave me like a panicky feeling. And I just kind of thought like, "Oh, that's weird."
Mhm.
And brushed it off. But now every single time I eat that frosting, I get that feeling. So
Oh,
I have decided I like found my own frosting recipe, a whole different thing that doesn't affect my body like that because every single time I have it, I feel like not good.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
also that exact same way with caffeine. If I have too much caffeine, like a sweet tea or, I don't drink sodas. I was raised like not drinking sodas. Weird family upbringing. But like if I were to have like super like a lot of dark chocolate or a glass of sweet tea or something, I get like the racing heart and panicky and it's like way too stressful for me to decide like, yeah, I'm gonna drink that because I like it. It's like
Hmm.
not at all worth it for me.
Yeah, and that made me think of another one, which is, like joints or joint pain. Sometimes there's a connection with like eating a certain way and that, or inflammation that maybe can be connected to certain dietary patterns. And you notice like, oh, if I eat this way for a few days, like my inflammation is acting up, or so there's really all sorts of physical symptoms like that. Heartburn would be another one, right? Or like get like uncomfortable, either burping or passing gas, like whatever, I think our bodies send us all kinds of physical symptoms. So, and then Maria, you talked about, you kind of asked the question in the beginning, but I definitely think we feel physically, mentally, and emotional. And I do think foods, or I mean, maybe we don't all know, but somewhere along the journey, you're going to think about like, how do I want to nourish my body? How do I want to take care of my body through food? What types of foods do I want to eat most often? And then you'll kind of know also, hey, I just ate X, like, how do I feel about that in this scenario on this day, right? Do I feel good about it? And it gets a little tricky. And I also want to say, like, especially for someone who's in the beginning of their intuitive eating journey, it's really easy to go to the immediate, well, like, of course, I'm going to feel bad if I eat French fries, and I'm going to feel great if I eat carrots, right? And the same client that I was having this conversation with yesterday kind of said that. She's like, well, I'm a little bit worried that I'm automatically going to think that the quote unquote, like, good foods that I've always historically thought of are the quote unquote healthy ones, make me feel better, and the quote unquote other ones don't. And I was saying to her that, yeah, that seems like the obvious go-to. However, it's not necessarily the case. And I was giving her the example. This is like maybe TMI, to be honest, but I just came back from vacation and I went to the grocery store and I loaded up on all the foods and I made this chopped buffalo chicken salad, and
Ooh.
it had like chopped carrots and chopped celery and bell peppers and I don't even remember, oh, snap peas, like a whole bunch of vegetables. I chopped them all up, and then it was on a bed of lettuce, and then it was made with this like creamy buttermilky dressing, and the chicken had buffalo. So long story short, I had planned a bunch of other meals to make over the weekend. However, randomly we ended up all being out, and then I never made any of the other things, so all I really had was like all this salad stuff. So I ate, and my mother-in-law had dropped off a bean salad, so for like 3 days in a row I was loading up on all like these salads just purely because it was what was in the house. And then by yesterday morning, you guys, I went to the bathroom like 6 times and it didn't feel very good. And I was like, okay, I think I've had way too many vegetables. And so I
I
was
love how
saying,
Elizabeth is definitely the most private person out of the three of us, and she shares this on the podcast.
yes, and now I've just told you all about. So I guess like that is one casualty of the job. I talk about poop a lot with people. So that's like my husband's a financial planner, and he often asks people questions about money that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you asked that. And he's like, oh, I don't know. I talk about it all day. It doesn't feel like a thing. And for me,
Yeah.
my poop is my version of that. So anyway, but all of that is to say, Maria's laughing at me. All of that is to say, like, it's not necessarily the case that just because it's a vegetable, it's automatically always going to make you feel better than a hamburger, right? Sometimes, every now and then, I'm like, I am craving a hamburger. Like, I take that as a sign that something in my body must need iron or something. And I eat that burger when on another day that might make me feel kind of like heavy and blah. And on that day, that is like exactly what I needed. And it feels good in my body. So I just really wanted to point that out as like, it's not the obvious just because it's a fruit or a vegetable, it makes you feel better, or just because it's a dessert, it makes you feel bad. There's some days when you want something sweet and that's going to hit the spot and it's going to feel great.
Since Maria told a story about her husband, I'll share one about mine. When he first moved to Maryland, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, his guts were horrible. Like, I don't know what was going on with Marcus's digestive system, but it was not good. And his dad came up to visit us and he was like, "Well, it's because you guys eat too many goddamn green beans." And I was kind of like, "What? The green beans taking strays over here. Like, we don't even eat that many green beans." But compared to someone who never eats vegetables, like maybe it did feel like a lot. And so we kind of did like what Maria did, where we kept like the food journal, whatever, and there was no rhyme or reason to it that we could find. And it turns out he actually had parasites. We discovered that like, 8 years later or whatever, when we went to
Oh
Peru and
no.
all of us got parasites. The treatment for that like fixed Marcus's guts completely. So I think that it totally can be the veggies. It can also be other stuff too, right? I also think this is one of my favorite parts of intuitive eating is like tuning into your body and seeing how stuff makes you feel. Like I'm really lucky that like the vast majority of what I eat makes me feel fine. Like I'm either feeling good or feeling neutral most of the time when I eat food. When I feel bad is when I eat too much of something. Like if I eat too much of whatever, salad, ice cream, you name it, whatever, I'm gonna feel bloated and gross. So I know that even though my mouth might want more, like if I just chill, give myself a little break and then go back and get more later if I want it, I'll feel better. And that for me was like really liberating when I started working on intuitive eating type stuff. It's like, dude, I can have the things. I just need to pay attention to how my body's reacting to it.
Yeah, and it brings up the point of just because something tastes good doesn't mean it's always going to feel good. And
Mhm.
learning how to honor that.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a personalized journey. When people maybe ask, what exactly should I eat or not eat? It's like, well, let's find out. Like, once you open that channel of communication with your own body, you're going to get a lot of answers that nobody else is going to have because, again, you are you, and there's just that unique process of how your relationship with those different kinds of food or how your body responds to it.
Not
That's
only
what's
are you,
important.
not only are you you, and what makes you feel good is going to be different than what makes me feel good or what my body needs to honor any specific, health things that I may have versus what you may have, but also we're not robots. So I think
Mhm.
one thing that I hate about I mean, one of many things I should say probably that I hate about the normal like dieting or Whole30 or whatever you want to call it approach is it makes us believe that we're supposed to be the same level of hungry and the same level and eat the same type of foods all the time. And it's individual, right? We're not the same level of hungry every day. We're not the same level of full every day. One day I might eat a certain thing, and like in that scenario, in the context of everything else I did or ate that day, it feels good. And on another day, maybe not as good. And so I think it's really ultimately all about getting curious and asking the questions. And I think another question that I didn't mention that could be helpful is, do I feel underfull, just right, or overfull after this meal? Right? We talked about pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and that can maybe be about a lot of things, but underfull, just right, or overfull can also just be more about like, how does that food feel in your stomach right now? Like, was that good or not good for you? So anyway, as we think about wrapping up, I would love any like thoughts. Oh, and also your moods, right? Your food impacts your moods, or it can impact your moods. So that can be another thing to think about. Also, like you ate that thing and maybe it felt fine, but were you ravenous an hour later, right? Maybe you needed something more filling or substantial or satisfying if you weren't planning to get a snack an hour later. So there's so many ways to tune in, but I hope that this conversation will give people some ideas of just even where to start if you're kind of have no idea or this is a new concept to you or if you've never thought much about it, to really start to tune in to how does the food make you feel. And I think when you can get really good at this and really in tune with it, That's when you really get to take your show on the road and you can go anywhere, anytime, and have the skill of putting meals together and choosing foods that, for the most part, feel good in your body versus, white knuckling your way through trying to follow some rigid or prescribed plan.
And something I thought of when you were talking, Elizabeth, the importance of knowing how to tune in with your body on a day to day is because also this can change. Like things can change. Like I'm thinking of my dad who, went through his whole life until he was like 65 a certain way, and then all of a sudden for no reason at age 65 he developed an allergy to fish. So
Hmm.
he noticed it because of his reaction, but then so he, took fish away from his diet. But then one day he was eating, and this is going to be fun for me to pronounce this, the Worcester sauce.
You did a pretty good job.
That was a good job.
Worcester,
Worcestershire sauce,
I
right?
Worcester,
feel like we have trouble pronouncing that
Yeah,
too.
no kidding.
the Worcestershire sauce, that one. Um,
The
so
Worcestershire sauce.
the Worcestershire sauce has anchovies in it.
Oh, yes.
And he had
Oh.
no clue, so he ate it one day, and he's like, "I'm feeling the same way." What? And he was convinced that's how he was feeling.
Aw.
And his wife is like, "But we didn't have any fish. We didn't have, nothing in the dinner. We." And then they found out that's what.
Yeah.
So I mean, just an example that even that's the beauty of that, pure relationship with your body, that when something is not going to feel right, even if nobody else gets it, you will know that
Yeah.
something there is not, matching with you. So I think that's one of the many reasons why it's also so important on your everydays to really get to know you.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I really want to point out that's just sort of cool about how all the principles of intuitive eating work together is that if you're someone who's really stuck in that good or bad mindset, it's going to be a lot harder to do this. That is one
Right.
of the roadblocks to intuitive eating. If you're someone who like regularly gets overly hungry or regularly gets overly full, that can be a potential roadblock. It's going to be harder to do it. If you're driven by that deprivation and restriction mindset, so that anytime you are around the certain foods, like you just have to have them because you don't know when you're going to have them again, that's going to make it so much harder to tune into your body and be like, you know what, I've actually had enough of that right now. Or that might sound good, but I don't want to eat it right now. So I just wanted to sort of also take that opportunity to point out how they all go together. That's why it's difficult to just pull out one principle of intuitive eating and think like, oh, like I'll get good at that. And that's like kind of the whole thing. They really truly do all go together and work together. And I would also say to people, if this is something that you're working on, just know that it takes time. Like you're not going to like this week start doing this and automatically understand like everything about it and how food makes you full. But every time you check in, you're helping to build that connection. You're helping to establish those neural patterns in your brain, and you're building the habit of checking in. And a simple way to get started is just like pick one meal this week and practice tuning in, or pick one meal a day and practice tuning in. And you can use some of these things we've talked about as ways to kind of access it. And also, if you want even more support to put it all together and to do this, be sure to download my free guide that you can get in the show notes, which is Uncover Your Invisible Diet. Because if you are invisibly dieting, that's definitely probably one of the things that will block you from being able to do this. So, final thoughts, ladies. What do you got?
This is awesome. If you love summaries like I do, this is my takeaway from this episode is tune in on how food makes you feel, right? And Elizabeth gave us two set of questions that I found really helpful. One, do I feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? And the other one, do I feel underfull, overfull, or just right? And then keep in mind that tuning in with your body, it includes a bunch of things. It could be bowel movement, energy level, mental clarity, level of satisfaction, your emotions, inflammation, gas, all of it. Open your all your senses and have that moment with your body to find out interesting things out of curiosity of what is part of you. That's my takeaway. That's my summary.
That's basically what I had too, you know?
Copycat.
Because you're so smart.
Cheater, cheater. Awesome. That's a wrap. See you guys next week.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara De Leon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.